On October 3, 2018, Jessy Kurczewski made a 911 call after finding her friend Lynn Hernan unresponsive inside her home. When first responders arrived, they discovered Lynn seated in her living room recliner, her body motionless. Surrounding her was a disturbing scene, a table crowded with prescription medication bottles, some open, others closed, along with pills scattered across the surface. On her chest, responders observed what appeared to be a small pile of crushed medication. Based on the condition of the scene and the visible evidence, authorities initially suspected that Lynn's death was either the result of suicide or an accidental overdose involving prescription drugs. Jessy, who described herself to the police as both Lynn's friend and caregiver, told investigators she had come to the house to check on Lynn, only to find her unresponsive. She reported that Lynn had suffered from serious health issues, which had taken a significant toll on her physical and emotional well-being. According to Jessy, Lynn had spoken about feeling overwhelmed by her declining health, and Jessy believed her friend's emotional state may have driven her to end her own life. Her statements were documented in the initial police report, which noted that no obvious signs of foul play were present at the scene. With prescription medications scattered nearby, no evidence of forced entry, and a plausible explanation from Jessy about Lynn's fragile health, authorities classified the case as a suspected overdose. Investigators thoroughly photographed the scene, capturing images of the medication bottles, Lynn's position in the recliner, and the general state of the room. There was nothing immediately apparent to contradict the assumption that Lynn had either intentionally or accidentally consumed a lethal combination of medications leading to her death. However, in January 2019, roughly 3 months after Lynn's death, the Waukesha County Sheriff's Office reopened the case after receiving the official toxicology report. The results revealed an unexpected and alarming discovery. Lynn's system contained a fatal dose of tetrahydrozoline, a chemical found in over-the-counter eye drops. This toxic concentration was entirely inconsistent with a routine overdose from prescription medication and raised serious concerns for investigators. The presence of tetrahydrozoline immediately shifted the direction of the investigation, turning what had seemed like an unfortunate case of self-harm into something far more sinister. As detectives re-examined the case with this new information, attention returned to Jessy Kurczewski, the very person who had reported finding Lynn's body. The investigation shifted from focusing on Lynn's health struggles to closely scrutinizing Jessy's relationship with her friend, her role as a caregiver, and her actions in the days and hours leading up to Lynn's death. Investigators questioned how tetrahydrozoline could have entered Lynn's system in such a lethal amount, particularly when there was no indication that Lynn had any reason to ingest it herself. The emerging details led investigators to wonder whether Jessy's concern and grief had been nothing more than a cover for something far more calculated. What began as a tragic, seemingly straightforward case of suicide or accidental overdose had now taken an unexpected turn. With toxicology evidence in hand, investigators were no longer looking at Lynn Hernan's death as the unfortunate result of health struggles or despair. Instead, the focus shifted to the unsettling possibility that her own trusted friend, the person who had discovered her body and called for help, could have played a direct role in her death. The central question investigators now faced was, how could Jessy Kurczewski, someone so closely involved in Lynn's life, become a suspect in the death of the very friend she was supposed to be supporting? Lynn Hernan was born on June 26, 1956, to her loving parents Bob and Lorraine Hernan, both of whom preceded her in death. From a young age, Lynn built strong friendships that stood the test of time, surrounding herself with the same close-knit circle of lifelong friends well into adulthood. Those friendships, combined with her outgoing personality and adventurous spirit, allowed Lynn to live a remarkably full life, especially during her first 40 years. She spent her early years growing up in Madison, Wisconsin, where her passion for beauty and creativity first took shape. After graduating as part of Lafayette High School's class of 1974, Lynn pursued her dream of becoming a hairstylist, eventually fulfilling her ambition of owning her own salon. Lynn's life wasn't just defined by her work. Her personality and passions extended far beyond her career. Hosting gatherings was another of her favorite pastimes, where her love for entertaining and cooking came together seamlessly. Friends were drawn to her warm hospitality and her ability to make any occasion special. Lynn's interests also reflected her love for classic cinema. She had a particular fondness for Bette Davis films, old black-and-white movies, and she never outgrew her appreciation for The Wizard of Oz, a film that remained close to her heart throughout her life. Although Lynn enjoyed a vibrant social life and maintained close ties with her friends, she never married and lived alone for most of her adult years. This independence allowed her to fully dedicate herself to both her career and the hobbies she cherished. Her compassion wasn't limited to her friends. She was known for her soft heart when it came to animals, often taking in stray pets and giving them a safe and loving home. Lynn's kindness, her creativity, and her love for both people and animals made her a cherished member of her community, known not only for her hairstyling talents, but also for her generosity and warmth. In February 2016, Jessy Kurczewski was released from prison, and not long after, she began spending time with Lynn, offering to help her with errands and other tasks. Lynn, always welcoming and trusting, opened her home and life to Jessy, embracing her presence as both a friend and a helper. As Jessy's role in Lynn's life grew, she took on the responsibilities of a caregiver, assisting Lynn with day-to-day needs. The two grew close over the following months, with Lynn believing she had found someone she could rely on during a time when her health was beginning to decline. However, in June 2016, just a few months after Jessy's release and her increasing involvement in Lynn's life, something concerning started to surface. Lynn's money market account began to show a series of large withdrawals. These transactions occurred in consecutive months, gradually depleting funds from an account Lynn had worked hard to build. At the same time, Jessy's presence in Lynn's home became more frequent, her influence growing in subtle but significant ways. While the transactions may not have raised immediate suspicion, they would later become key evidence as investigators pieced together the events leading up to Lynn's death. As Lynn and Jessy's friendship continued to develop, it became clear in hindsight that Jessy's intentions may not have been driven by genuine friendship or compassion for her longtime family friend. While Lynn likely believed she had someone she could trust, someone offering care and support during a vulnerable time, the truth would eventually emerge. Jessy's primary interest wasn't Lynn's well-being. It was her money. What appeared to be a close bond rooted in loyalty and concern would ultimately unravel, revealing a far more sinister reality. One fueled by greed and a cold disregard for the very person Jessy claimed to care for. As investigators dug deeper into Lynn Hernan's medical history and the events leading up to her death, they uncovered a troubling pattern. Lynn suffered from multiple chronic health conditions, including lung disease, high blood pressure, and severe gastrointestinal issues that had remained undiagnosed despite numerous medical evaluations. These health challenges led to repeated hospital visits throughout the year before her death. As her physical condition deteriorated, her reliance on Jessy increased significantly. Whenever Lynn fell in her home, it was Jessy who came to help her get back on her feet. Jessy was always present, gradually becoming more than just a friend. She assumed the role of Lynn's full-time caregiver. In addition to assisting with Lynn's mobility and personal care, Jessy also handled much of Lynn's daily responsibilities. She took over grocery shopping, ensuring Lynn had food in the house, and paid Lynn's bills on her behalf. The trust between them appeared solid, with Lynn relying on Jessy for virtually every aspect of her day-to-day life. On September 28, 2018, Lynn was discharged from the hospital after a 2-week stay. Her doctors recommended she receive full-time home health care moving forward, reinforcing the extent of her vulnerability and the need for ongoing assistance. Jessy's presence in Lynn's life seemed like an invaluable lifeline, until a 911 call just days later would cast everything into question. With fresh attention focused on Lynn's toxicology report, investigators began questioning whether her death could have been something far more sinister than an accidental overdose or suicide. The same friend who had appeared so devastated and cooperative at the scene was now a figure of growing interest in their unfolding investigation. As investigators retraced the timeline of Lynn's decline and death, financial records, medical history, and Jessy's own behavior started forming a pattern that investigators could no longer ignore. What began as a death attributed to health complications and possible suicide was quickly turning into a potential murder case. On July 9, 2019, several months into the investigation, Jessy Kurczewski was arrested, not for Lynn's death, but for a parole violation related to her earlier fraud convictions. While in custody, she was interviewed by police 6 separate times over the following days. Each time she was questioned, her account of events surrounding Lynn's death shifted, creating inconsistencies that only raised further suspicion. Investigators pressed her on details, but Jessy's ever-changing story only made their doubts grow stronger. The more they questioned her, the more it became clear that Jessy's connection to Lynn's death was far from incidental. By June 4, 2021, just one day before Jessy was set to be released after serving time for her parole violation, authorities took decisive action. She was formally charged with the murder of Lynn Hernan, along with 2 theft counts, one for the money she had stolen from Lynn while she was still alive, and the other for stealing from Lynn's estate after her death. Investigators had traced Jessy's financial exploitation of Lynn back to January 2016, shortly after Jessy was released from prison. Over the course of nearly 3 years, Jessy had siphoned approximately $144,000 from Lynn's accounts, draining funds month after month while presenting herself as a trusted caregiver and friend. By the time October 3, 2018 arrived, the day Jessy called 911 to report Lynn's death, Lynn was worth more to Jessy dead than alive. With Lynn gone, Jessy could gain access to the remainder of her estate, completing a scheme driven by greed rather than care. What at first glance had appeared to be a tragic case of a woman succumbing to her declining health was, in reality, a calculated crime. It was never about compassion or friendship. It was about money Jessy wanted regardless of the cost. In October 2023, Jessy Kurczewski's trial officially began, marking the next chapter in a case that had already spanned several years. Prosecutors laid out their argument, presenting evidence that painted a picture of betrayal, greed, and premeditated murder. They detailed Jessy's financial exploitation of Lynn Hernan and the chilling use of tetrahydrozoline, the active ingredient in eye drops, as the murder weapon. The prosecution argued that Jessy's pattern of theft, combined with the toxicology results and shifting stories, left no doubt that she had intentionally poisoned Lynn to gain control of her remaining assets. On November 14, 2023, after carefully weighing the evidence and testimony, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Jessy Kurczewski was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree intentional homicide and theft. Her conviction brought some closure to the investigation, but the story did not end there. Just weeks after the guilty verdict, an unexpected twist emerged when one of Jessy's friends received a suspicious packet of documents, allegedly sent by Jessy herself. The documents contained forged materials, including fake legal paperwork designed to exonerate Jessy, along with instructions on how to falsify a notary seal to make them appear legitimate. The discovery of the forged documents raised serious ethical concerns, and on December 7, 2023, Jessy Kurczewski's attorneys withdrew from the case on the very day she was scheduled to be sentenced. The withdrawal left Jessy without legal representation at a critical moment, further complicating the proceedings. With her attorneys no longer representing her, Jessy faced the sentencing hearing alone, as the court weighed both her crimes and the damage done to the people who had trusted her most. The court ultimately moved forward with sentencing, bringing a formal end to the case's judicial process. During the trial, prosecutors stood firm in their argument that Jessy had deliberately poisoned Lynn by secretly giving her a lethal dose of eye drops, exploiting Lynn's fragile health to mask the murder as a natural decline. They also laid out how Jessy had systematically drained nearly $300,000 from Lynn's accounts before and after her death. The defense, however, offered a different explanation, claiming that Lynn had voluntarily consumed the eye drops mixed with vodka to help her sleep and manage her chronic pain. Jessy continued to deny any responsibility for Lynn's death, insisting that she had done nothing more than follow Lynn's own unusual habits. Despite Jessy's claims of innocence, the medical examiner's findings were clear. Lynn's death was caused by acute tetrahydrozoline poisoning, and the concentration found in her system was far beyond any amount she could have consumed accidentally. The medical examiner testified that the toxic dose could not have been self-administered in the manner Jessy described. Several of Lynn's close friends testified during the sentencing phase, describing Lynn as a compassionate and loving woman who cared deeply for her family and rescued animals in need. They urged the court to impose the harshest possible sentence, asking for life without parole, in the hope that justice for Lynn would finally be served. On April 5, 2024, Jessy Kurczewski was sentenced to 30 years to life for the murder of Lynn Hernan. In addition to the murder sentence, Jessy received an additional 10 years for the 2 theft convictions, one for the money she stole while Lynn was alive, and the other for funds taken from Lynn's estate after her death. The court ordered the sentences to be served consecutively, ensuring that Jessy would spend the majority of her remaining life behind bars. The sentencing reflected not only the severity of the crime, but also the profound breach of trust and the premeditation involved in Lynn's death. What are your thoughts on Jessy Kurczewski and the shocking betrayal that led to the death of Lynn Hernan? Do you believe the 30-year sentence for murder and additional 10 years for theft were enough to bring justice for Lynn and her loved ones? How do you feel about the way Jessy manipulated her position as a trusted caregiver, using that trust to steal from someone who considered her a close friend? And what are your thoughts on the disturbing lengths she went to, from poisoning to forging documents, all in an effort to escape responsibility? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you are new to the channel and like the content, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for upcoming episodes. Your support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you on Urban Crime Stories.